Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're sitting. Welcome to the Enterprise Greece webinar on EU free trade agreements with Asian countries. Κυρίες και κύριοι, διακεκριμένοι καλεσμένοι, καλώς ήρθατε στο διαδικτυακό σεμινάριο της Enterprise Greece για τις Συμφωνίες Ελευθέρου Εμπορίου της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης με τις χώρες της Ασίας. I'd like to make just a very short introduction because obviously we're at a really interesting point of view. Some of you may recognize by my accent that I am partly American, and so I speak with some sort of observation from a US perspective, that the chaos wrought by President Donald Trump's tariff policies has created a new uncertainty in the world of international trade. The erosion of the rules-based multilateral trade framework has lent even greater urgency to bilateral free trade agreements between the EU and other trading partners. If the EU plays its cards right, the EU will well emerge as a new champion of free trade. The European Union, I remind you, is 450 million consumers, 27 countries. It accounts for roughly 16% of the world trade, and has 75 international trade agreements, more than triple the United States does. It's up to the EU now to take the lead. I want to emphasize, too, that SMEs are the backbone of both the European economy and very much the Greek economy. They represent about 99% of all businesses, at least in Greece, and about 2/3 of all private sector jobs and half of Europe's value added. 98% of EU exporters are SMEs, and they account for 1/3 of the EU's export value. So this seminar is focusing on one of the most exciting growth markets in the world, which is the Far East, Asia, and particularly Southeast Asia. And with that introduction, I would ask for our distinguished guests to begin with Dimitris Skalkos, the General Secretary for International Commercial Relations and Extroversion at the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to make some introductory welcome remarks. Mr. Skalkos?
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, κύριε Γρανίτσα. Θα μου επιτρέψετε να μιλήσω στα ελληνικά, μια και από ό,τι καταλαβαίνω οι περισσότεροι από τους συμμετέχοντες στο webinar σήμερα είναι Έλληνες. Θα προσπαθήσω να μιλήσω και αργά, οπότε να μην έχουμε κανένα ζήτημα με τη μετάφραση. Από την πλευρά μου, λοιπόν, θέλω να σας καλωσορίσω εκ μέρους του Υπουργείου Εξωτερικών της Ελλάδας και της Enterprise Greece σε αυτό το webinar. Περιττεύει να επισημάνω ότι τα webinar είναι ένα εργαλείο που χρησιμοποιούμε όλο ένα και περισσότερο και στην Enterprise Greece και στο Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών για να προωθήσουμε τις δράσεις μας, και είναι κάτι που θέλουμε να συνεχίσουμε να το κάνουμε με μεγαλύτερη ένταση στο άμεσο μέλλον, γιατί βλέπουμε πως αποδίδει. Θέλω επίσης να σας πω ότι είμαι ιδιαίτερα χαρούμενος που συμμετέχω στο συγκεκριμένο webinar, καθώς οι διεθνείς εμπορικές συμφωνίες, τα FTAs όπως τα λέμε, τα Foreign Trade Agreements αποτελούν πια ένα σημαντικό εργαλείο για την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, ειδικά υπό το φως των πρόσφατων εξελίξεων, στις οποίες αναφερθήκατε και εσείς πολύ σωστά, κύριε Γρανίτσα. Γίνεται μια πολύ σημαντική προσπάθεια σε ευρωπαϊκό επίπεδο να διαφοροποιήσουμε τις εμπορικές μας οδούς, να ανοιχτούμε και να ενισχύσουμε την παρουσία των ευρωπαϊκών προϊόντων αλλά και επιχειρήσεων επενδυτικών σχεδίων σε τρίτες αγορές, και ο καλύτερος τρόπος να το πετύχουμε αυτό είναι μέσα από αυτό το εργαλείο των διμερών συμφωνιών. Βεβαίως, ο ιδεατός τρόπος οργάνωσης, θα έλεγα, του διεθνούς οικονομικού συστήματος είναι ο πολυμερής, το multilateralism. Βεβαίως, ζούμε στην εποχή της μεγάλης αβεβαιότητας που αυτό το ιδεατό απέχει από το να είναι μια πραγματικότητα, και εναλλακτικά το να προωθούμε περιφερειακές συμφωνίες, το regionalism, σίγουρα μπορεί να βοηθήσει σε αυτή την κατεύθυνση. Έχουμε λοιπόν, όπως είπα, τον κατακαιρματισμό του διεθνούς εμπορίου. Τα σημάδια είναι ανησυχητικά. Βεβαίως η διεθνής οικονομία δείχνει μια σημαντική ανθεκτικότητα, ενδεχομένως γιατί υπήρξε ένα front loading σε παραγγελίες, γνωρίζοντας την αναστάτωση που θα προκαλούνταν από την ενίσχυση των δασμολογικών εμποδίων. Σε κάθε περίπτωση πρέπει να σκεφτόμαστε μέσω μακροπρόθεσμα, και σίγουρα, όπως είπαμε, αυτός ο κατακαιρματισμός είναι κάτι ανησυχητικός, Και από την άλλη μεριά, η προώθηση της περιφερειακής συνεργασίας και των FTAs μπορεί να μας βοηθήσει να μειώσουμε τις απώλειες, ενδεχομένως και να βρεθούμε, ποιος ξέρει, σε ένα καλύτερο περιβάλλον και από αυτό που έχουμε σήμερα μακροπρόθεσμα. Είναι σημαντική, όπως είπε, η ανάγκη της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης να διαφοροποιήσει τις εμπορικές εισοδούς και να ανοιχτεί σε τρίτες αγορές. Αυτό είναι κάτι που αποτέλεσε έναν από τους τρεις κύριους άξονες συζήτηση στο πρόσφατο Συμβούλιο Εξωτερικών Υποθέσεων στη Δανία, που είχα την χαρά να συμμετάσχω στην συζήτηση με τους Υπουργούς Εξωτερικών των 27 κρατών μελών της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Χαιρετίστηκε ιδιαίτερα η ολοκλήρωση της συμφωνίας με την Ινδονησία. Βεβαίως αναμένουμε και την κύρωσή της στις αρχές του 2026. Η Ινδονησία για την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, και προφανώς συμφωνώ πολύ περισσότερο και εγώ προσωπικά, είναι ένα υπόδειγμα που θα πρέπει να ακολουθήσουμε και με άλλες αντίστοιχες συμφωνίες με χώρες της Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας, όπως είναι για παράδειγμα οι Φιλιππίνες, η Μαλαισία και η Ταϊλάνδη. Η Νοτιοανατολική Ασία, όπως και είναι μία από τις περιοχές που βρίσκονται στο πεδίο στόχευσης της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης, όπως και βεβαίως και άλλες, θα πρέπει να τις αναφέρω και αυτές. FTAs προσπαθούμε να προωθήσουμε και να ολοκληρώσουμε προφανώς με την Ινδία, με χώρες της Μερκοσούρ, με τις υπόλοιπες χώρες του γκρουπ των κρατών της ΑΖΕΑΝ, με το Μεξικό, με την Αυστραλία, με τις χώρες του κόλπου. Προφανώς είναι χώρες που ενδιαφέρουν ειδικά την χώρα μας. Αλλά βεβαίως η περιοχή της Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας ειδικότερα είναι πολύ σημαντική για μας, για δύο λόγους. Ο ένας είναι γιατί έχουμε μία μέγα τάση, ένα μέγα trend. Έχουμε μία μετατόπιση της παγκόσμιας οικονομικής ισχύως προς την Ανατολή, και αυτό πρέπει να το λάβουμε σοβαρά υπόψη μας. Αυτή είναι μία τάση που θα τη βλέπουμε να ενισχύεται όλο ένα και περισσότερο τα επόμενα χρόνια. Και βεβαίως ενδιαφέρει και ειδικότερα ως δεύτερος λόγος την Ελλάδα. Ο όγκος του εμπορίου το 2024 της χώρας μας με τις χώρες Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας έφτασε οριακά τα 1,4 δισεκατομμύρια ευρώ. Και επειδή αντιλαμβάνομαι ότι μας παρακολουθούν και πολλοί φίλοι επιχειρηματίες που ενδεχομένως ενδιαφέρονται ή θα ενδιαφερόντουσαν να δραστηριοποιηθούν σε αυτές τις χώρες, θέλω να τους πω ότι προετοιμάζονται επιχειρηματικές αποστολές από και προς την Ινδονησία σε πρώτη φάση, με ορίζοντα την άνοιξη του 2026. Βεβαίως για όλα αυτά είναι προφανές ότι θα κρατούμε κάθε ενδιαφερόμενο ενήμερο. Άρα λοιπόν αυτή η περιοχή μας ενδιαφέρει πάρα πολύ. Θα μου επιτρέψετε επίσης να πω για την ελληνική οικονομία ότι κάθε τι που έχει να κάνει με την ενίσχυση εξωστρέφειά της είναι στο επίκεντρό μας. Γνωρίζουμε ότι περισσότερο ανοιχτές, περισσότερο εξωστρεφείς οικονομίες παγκοσμίως είναι αυτές που καταγράφουν υψηλότερους ρυθμούς ανάπτυξης. Γνωρίζουμε και πια και με στοιχεία ότι ένα μέρος της καλής επίδοσης ελληνικής οικονομίας τα τελευταία χρόνια έχει προέλθει από την ενίσχυση αυτής της εξωστρέφειας. Θα μου επιτρέψετε μόνο ενδεικτικά να αναφέρω δύο νούμερα. Για το 2024 στις εξαγωγές που οριακά έφτασαν τα 50 δισεκατομμύρια ευρώ, αυτό το νούμερο αποτελεί την τρίτη υψηλότερη επίδοση την τελευταία 20 ετία, ενώ στην προσέλκυση των άμεσων ξένων επενδύσεων, τα 6,75 δισεκατομμύρια ευρώ επενδύσεων ξένων που επενδύθηκαν στην ελληνική οικονομία την τελευταία 20 ετία αποτελούν τη δεύτερη καλύτερη επίδοση. Και βεβαίως πρέπει να πω ένα τρίτο στοιχείο, ότι το 2025, παρά την αναστάτωση στις παγκόσμιες αλυσίδες αξίας, έχει φανεί η ανθεκτικότητα της ελληνικής οικονομίας. Αν εξαιρέσει κανείς τις εξαγωγές, τα προϊόντα του πετρελαίου, που εξαρτώνται ειδικά, όπως καταλαβαίνετε, και από τις τιμές του πετρελαίου διεθνώς, έχει καταγραφεί και μία ενίσχυση της τάξης του 5,5% το πρώτο επτάμηνο του 2025. Άρα λοιπόν, καλή επίδοση της ελληνικής οικονομίας που θέλουμε να την ενισχύσουμε με μεγαλύτερη ενίσχυση της παρουσίας μας σε τρίτες αγορές. Και όταν μιλούμε για τρίτες αγορές, στην προτεραιότητά μας είναι σίγουρα και η περιοχή της Ασίας και ειδικότερα της Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας. Αυτό το κάνουμε οργανωμένα. Ήδη εκπονείται και θα είναι έτοιμο τον Μάρτιο του 2026 για πρώτη φορά ένα πενταετές στρατηγικό σχέδιο εξωστρέφειας. Είχαμε ετήσια σχέδια εξωστρέφειας. Τώρα προσπαθούμε να δώσουμε έτσι λίγο χρονικό βάθος και κάποια πιο στρατηγική σκέψη στη δράση μας. Έχει ξεκινήσει ήδη διαβούλευση με το σύνολο των φορέων της εξωστρέφειας και τους παραγωγικούς φορείς της ελληνικής οικονομίας. Θα τελειώσει τις επόμενες εβδομάδες. Θα επεξεργαστούμε τα δεδομένα. Είμαι όμως βέβαιος ότι στις γεωγραφικές προτεραιότητες που θα μας θέσουν εκεί οι φορείς, σίγουρα θα περιλαμβάνεται και η περιοχή της Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας. Βεβαίως δεν περιμένουμε όλα αυτά να ετοιμαστούν. Η ελληνική οικονομία τρέχει, το Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών ακολουθεί ή προσπαθεί να ενισχύσει την πορεία της ελληνικής οικονομίας σε ό,τι έχει να κάνει ειδικά τις χώρες Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας. Μόλις πριν από 2 εβδομάδες υπεγράφει ένα μνημόνιο συνεργασίας που θα μου επιτρέψετε να χαρακτηρίσω σημαντικό ανάμεσα στην Enterprise Greece και στο Hellenic Asia Business Council, το οποίο θέτει τις βάσεις για μια πιο στέρεη συνεργασία ανάμεσα στις χώρες του ASEAN Group και τις ελληνικές επιχειρήσεις. Κάπου εδώ νομίζω πρέπει να σταματήσω. Είναι προφανές ότι και οι διευθύνσεις οι αρμόδιες του Υπουργείου Εξωτερικών και πολύ περισσότερο συνάδελφοι στην Enterprise Greece, αλλά και το γραφείο μου και εγώ προσωπικά, είμαστε στη διάθεσή σας οποιαδήποτε στιγμή να συζητήσουμε οτιδήποτε έχει να κάνει την ενίσχυση της παρουσίας των ελληνικών προϊόντων, των ελληνικών επιχειρήσεων στις χώρες της Ασίας και ειδικότερα της Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας. Επίσης θα απολογηθώ. Δύσκολα θα καταφέρω να παρακολουθήσω ως το τέλος το webinar. Σίγουρα όμως θα ενημερωθώ και πάλι να σας ευχαριστήσω για την προσοχή σας και την πρόσκληση. Ευχαριστώ.
Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ, κύριε Σκάλκο. Thank you very much, Mr. Skalkos. Thank you for the introduction. And please, yes, as much as you can join us, we would be honored by your presence. But I appreciate that you have other obligations. The next greeting is from Ioannis Vareilas, His Excellency Ambassador Ioannis Vareilas, Permanent Representative of Greece to the EU, also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Vareilas could not join us live, so he has prepared a video message welcoming everyone to the seminar.
Αξιότιμη κυρία Γενική Γραμματέα, αξιότιμες κυρίες και κύριοι συνδιοργανωτές και συνάδελφοι από την Επιτροπή, αξιότιμες κυρίες και κύριοι. Καταρχάς θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω θερμά το Enterprise Greece και το Enterprise Europe Network Ελλάς για τη συνεργασία στη σημαντική αυτή πρωτοβουλία ενημέρωσης των επιχειρήσεών μας για δεύτερη συνεχή χρονιά. Επίσης, ένα μεγάλο ευχαριστώ στους συνάδελφους της Ευρωπαϊκής Επιτροπής για τη διαρκή και ουσιαστική του συμβολή στην ενίσχυση της θέσης της Ένωσης και κατ' επέκταση της χώρας μας στην παγκόσμια αγορά. Θα αναφερθώ σε ένα από τα πιο κρίσιμα ζητήματα για την Ευρώπη σήμερα, στις προκλήσεις της κοινής εμπορικής πολιτικής και στο ρόλο της ενημέρωσης και συμμετοχής των επιχειρήσεων στην προάσπιση των εθνικών μας συμφερόντων. Το εμπόριο υπήρξε πάντα στον πυρήνα του ευρωπαϊκού εγχειρήματος. Ενίσχυσε την ενιαία αγορά, αύξησε την παγκόσμια επιρροή μας και έφερε ευημερία στους πολίτες μας. Ωστόσο, το διεθνές περιβάλλον έχει αλλάξει ριζικά. Η σχετική σταθερότητα έχει δώσει τη θέση της στον ανταγωνισμό ισχύως και στις απαιτήσεις που δημιουργεί ο ραγδαίος ψηφιακός μετασχηματισμός και η κλιματική κατάρρευση. Στην τρέχουσα συγκυρία αντιμετωπίζουμε γεωπολιτικές και γεωοικονομικές προκλήσεις. Ο πόλεμος στην Ουκρανία, η ενεργειακή εξάρτηση και οι πιέσεις στις εφοδιαστικές αλυσίδες ανέδειξαν την ανάγκη για ανθεκτικότητα και στρατηγική αυτονομία. Επιπρόσθετα, ο διαρκώς εντυνόμενος προστατευτισμός και ο οξυνόμενος ανταγωνισμός μεταξύ των ΗΠΑ και της Κίνας και ευρύτερα δημιουργούν νέες αβεβαιότητες, αποσταθεροποιώντας το παγκόσμιο εμπορικό σύστημα και αναδιαμορφώνοντάς το προς κατευθύνσεις που παραμένουν ακόμα ασαφείς και αβέβαιες. Αυτό που πάντως καθίσταται σαφές είναι ότι το εμπόριο πλέον δεν αφορά μόνο την οικονομία. Αφορά την ισχύ, την τεχνολογία και την ασφάλεια. Στο πλαίσιο αυτό, η Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή έχει εντείνει τις προσπάθειες διαφοροποίησης των πηγών εφοδιασμού της Ένωσης και των εξαγωγικών προορισμών των ευρωπαϊκών επιχειρήσεων. Το σημερινό webinar, με επίκεντρο την εμβάθυνση των σχέσεων με τις οικονομίες της Ανατολικής και Νοτιοανατολικής Ασίας, μιας περιοχής με δυναμική ανάπτυξη και στρατηγική σημασία, είναι εξαιρετικά επίκαιρο. Η ενίσχυση του εμπορίου με τις χώρες αυτές θα ανοίξει τεράστιες αγορές για τις επιχειρήσεις μας και θα ενισχύσει τους δεσμούς μας με μια περιοχή που βρίσκεται στον πυρήνα των παγκόσμιων εμπορικών ροών. Αυτό βέβαια απαιτεί συντονισμό, εναρμόνιση κανονιστικών προτύπων, άρση εμποδίων, στενή συνεργασία με όλους τους εμπλεκόμενους φορείς της περιοχής, ακόμα και ενεργοποίηση αμυντικών μέσων όταν τούτο κρίνεται απαραίτητο. Για όλους τους λόγους αυτούς, η διαρκής διάδρασή μας, αφενός με τους ευρωπαϊκούς φορείς και επιχειρήσεις και αφετέρου με τους ευρωπαϊκούς θεσμούς, είναι κρίσιμη. Κυρίες και κύριοι, θα ήθελα να σας διαβεβαιώσω ότι η μόνιμη αντιπροσωπεία της Ελλάδας στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση βρίσκεται πάντα στη διάθεσή σας για την καταγραφή των αιτημάτων σας και υπό τον συντονισμό της Κεντρικής Υπηρεσίας του Υπουργείου Εξωτερικών και της Γενικής Γραμματείας Διεθνών Οικονομικών Σχέσεων για την προώθηση ή και την επίλυσή τους. Θέλουμε να ακούμε τις επιδιώξεις και τις εμπειρίες σας από τις διεθνείς αγορές, ώστε οι θέσεις που μεταφέρουμε στην Επιτροπή και συνολικά στους θεσμούς των Βρυξελών να αντανακλούν τις πραγματικές ανάγκες της ελληνικής οικονομίας. Παράλληλα, οι δυσκολίες που επισημαίνετε μας βοηθούν να στοχεύουμε αποτελεσματικότερα τις προσπάθειές μας και συμβάλλουν στη συνεχή βελτίωση των μηχανικών υποστήριξης που διαθέτει η Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή προς τις επιχειρήσεις. Η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και τα κράτη-μέλη καλούνται να κινηθούν με σταθερότητα μέσα σε ένα ιδιαίτερα σύνθετο και δυναμικό περιβάλλον. Η επιτυχία μας θα εξαρτηθεί από την ικανότητά μας να προσαρμοζόμαστε και η προσαρμογή απαιτεί συνεργασία. Να αξιοποιούμε τις οικονομίες κλίμακας που προσφέρει η Ένωση και τα διαθέσιμα μέσα της Επιτροπής, προβάλλοντας παράλληλα τα συγκριτικά πλεονεκτήματα της χώρας μας στις διεθνείς αγορές. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you, Angeliki, for sharing the screen for us, and in absentia, the ambassador for his remarks. I'd like to move on, if it's all right with everyone, and turn to our next speaker, Anastasia Sarhosoglu, the coordinator of the Enterprise Europe Network, Hellas, that the ambassador just referred to.
Thank you, Mr. Garnitas. Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished speakers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and an honor to welcome you all to today's webinar dedicated to the EU free trade agreements with Asian countries, new horizons for your exports. On behalf of the Enterprise Europe Network, Hellas, I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all of you join us, representatives of institutions, business support organizations, export-oriented enterprises, and colleagues from across Europe and beyond. Today's session, organized in close collaboration with Enterprise Greece and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is not just another information event. It is a part of a wider effort to strengthen the international presence of Greek small and medium-sized enterprises, to open new doors, to new partnerships, and to new possibilities. As we all know, the European Union's free trade agreements are powerful instruments that reduce trade barriers, facilitate access to new markets, and promote rules-based sustainable global trade. For Greek companies, particularly SMEs, these agreements represent real opportunities for growth, opportunities to diversify exports, to innovate, and to expand into dynamic regions such as Asia, where demand is rapidly increasing across multiple sectors, from agri-food and manufacturing to green technologies and digital services. The Enterprise Europe Network is the world's largest support network for SMEs, active in more than 60 countries. Through its services, the network helps companies identify markets, find partners, transfer technology, and access to funding and expertise. In Greece, the Enterprise Europe Network, Hellas, brings together 15 leading organizations, chambers of commerce, regional development agencies, innovation centers, and research institutes, working as one to empower Greek enterprises to succeed globally. As we have just entered the new program period 2025 to 2028, our consortium has defined an ambitious strategy focused on 5 key directions. First of all, supporting the internationalization and competitiveness of SMEs through targeted advisory services, matchmaking events, and sectoral initiatives, such as those focused on the agri-food industry, the green and digital transition, the health sector, and advanced manufacturing. Second, bridging the gap between research and business. We aim to bring universities, research organizations, and companies closer together to transform knowledge into value and value into sustainable growth. Third, accelerating the twin transition, green and digital. This means helping enterprises to adopt environmentally sustainable practices, integrate new technologies such as artificial intelligence and data analytics, and develop business models that are resilient and future-proof. Fourth, ensuring inclusiveness and regional balance. We want the benefits of European support mechanisms to reach every corner of the country, from Attica to the islands and the northern regions, ensuring that every entrepreneur has access to quality services regardless of size or location. And fifth, fostering cross-border collaboration and trust. The Enterprise Europe Network Hellas is strongly committed to strengthening its international partnerships, especially within the Mediterranean and the wider European neighborhood. Collaboration, after all, is at the heart of everything we do. Today's webinar is a perfect example of how these strategic goals translate into practice. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank Enterprise Greece and Ministry of Foreign Affairs for their continued collaboration and trust. Together, we have built a strong partnership that combines policy insight with hands-on business support. Let me also express my appreciation to our speakers, representatives from the European Commission, our national trained experts in the business community, for joining us today and sharing their knowledge and experience. And of course, I would like to thank you, all of you, the participants, for dedicating your time to be here. Your presence reflects a shared commitment to openness, to cooperation, and to a vision of Greece as a confident and innovative trading nation at the heart of Europe. Thank you all very much, and I wish a productive and inspiring session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kosoglu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the introductions from all of our distinguished guests. We now move on to the second stage of our program, which is where we'll have the introduction from our panel of 4 experts. First among them is Mr. Peter Berets, who joined the European Commission in 1993 and currently works in the Directorate General for Trade and Economic Security as head of the unit responsible for the implementation and enforcement of the European Union's external trade agreement. I believe Mr. Berets was in fact chief negotiator for a number of the trade agreements that we're discussing today in East, South, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, and will inform us a little bit about what's in the pipeline as the EU widens its network of trade agreements. Mr. Berets.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Vanitsas. Thank you for Enterprise Greece for having me. Can I be understood? Yes, I'm sorry that I don't speak Greek, but I will also speak slowly to help the interpreters to help me to get understood. And of course, my first question is to you: why should you care about EU trade agreements? What's in for companies in Greece, smaller, medium-sized, and larger companies? Exports of many European countries and companies are within the European Union. A huge proportion is trade between our EU member states. And it's especially the case for small and medium-sized enterprises that are more into supply chain than big companies. Supply chain meaning that they supply their primary products to companies in bigger member states who then export their stuff. But like that, also small and medium-sized enterprises are part of the global supply chain. They are part of the trade, the international trade the European Union has. You are importer of primary products for your productions. You are exporter to supply either to bigger companies your primary product, or you export directly. However, we see that contrary to the 97% of companies in the European Union that are small and medium-sized enterprises, only 5% of these companies trade internationally. They only trade within the respective member state or within the European Union. And we want to make sure that there's this untapped potential of our small and medium-sized enterprises to go out, face international trade. Some say with a website for your company, you are already a global company, but it takes a bit more than that. And that's why we are here to help you to understand what we are doing. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that you focus here on a region that is quite dear to me, because I was working for 15 years as head of the Asia department in the European Commission, and myself negotiated a number of these trade agreements. These trade agreements are not a means in itself. We want to create jobs, we want to create growth and opportunities. For that, we need to open markets in third countries through these agreements, and we want to ensure that the supply chains are maintained for your primary products, which you have to get from third countries, be it rare earth, be it critical raw materials, be it steel, be it whatever. These trade agreements help us to diversify to markets across the Earth globe and to ensure that our supply of resources is guaranteed. They create a level playing field. Many of our competitors have already preferential access, especially in Asia. There's basically no country in Asia that doesn't have a trade agreement with China. And therefore, Chinese exports benefit massively from much better access to their markets than we do. As I said, these trade agreements support sustainable supply chains. They ensure reliability and predictability in our trade relations. For example, we have in the global geo-economic environment lots of uncertainty, not only in Washington, but also in Beijing. How trade is ruled at the moment. We have an American president that is a bit unpredictable what measure he takes next. We have a Chinese government that is characterized in its economy by overcapacity and subsidization. So very hard to tackle and very hard to compete with these countries. So we in the European Union are quite a reliable partner for many, many countries around the world. And they turn to us. They see the values in engaging with us because we have a big market, more than 400 million people. We are respecting rules, and people in third countries don't have to fear that we are not respecting rules. And we provide an alternative also to bigger countries like China and United States to find alternative markets and sources of products. On that, currently our trade agreements with 40 countries and with 40 agreements in 70 countries, more or less, because we cover in some agreements also a region of more than one country, like with Mercosur or Central America. We cover at the moment more than 50% of our external trade through preferential treatments. I will demonstrate now that we are trying to increase that ratio by go up to more than 70% through our new trade agreements. We will also see that these trade agreements provide a platform for further engagement, and they also provide what we call a cushion for external shocks. I give an example. When we had COVID, lots of world trade went down. It went down far more with trading partners with which we did not have a trade agreement. Whereas the impact of COVID measures on our trade relations with our FTA partners was far less than with others. These give also a concrete example. Our exports to Canada over the last 5 years climbed by 60% compared to the period before the FTA entered into force. And many of other FTAs have similar record numbers in terms of additional opportunities. So we want to make sure that these opportunities are widely spread, and we welcome a lot these opportunities to engage with companies around the European Union to promote our agreements and to demonstrate also how they can be used. So let's have a look at Asia, and I call it here Asia Pacific region, or the Indo-Pacific, some say, depending where you are. The Indians like to call it Indo-Pacific, the Chinese more Asia Pacific. Several of our first new generation agreements are in that region. New generation means 15 years ago, we decided to have not just very basic agreements calling on trade in goods, how we reduce tariffs, but we want to be much broader. We call that deep and comprehensive. So not only lowering tariffs, but also looking into services sector, how to open services sector, architectural services, legal service, teaching, etc. We want to open the procurement market, that our companies can participate in tenders by municipalities, by the government in third countries on the same conditions as a national government company can do that. That means concretely, Korea, when it opens a tender for building a railway, we want to be able to participate in that competition to get that contract. Intellectual property rights. We want to make sure our patents, our trademarks, our copyrights are protected in these third countries, including our geographic indications, meaning FETA, for example, is always a big issue with third countries because they all have their own FETA, but we want to always make sure FETA that is sold in an FTA partner has to come from Greece and nowhere else. Always one of the last issues we have in the negotiations, because often countries have their own FETA for decades, and it means basically they have to stop the production because we only allow Greek FETA in such markets. Trade facilitation is something very concrete for our companies to benefit from trade agreements. We want to ensure that customs procedures are facilitated, that standards and regulation get more and more aligned or recognized, that we don't have to do double testing, we don't have to have double standards, and you have to change your product to comply with the standards of another market. So this is all very hands-on, very difficult to achieve, however, ambitions we have in such trade agreements, because often third countries say, well, my industrial standard exists for 50 years, why should I change it now to the European standards? And why don't you align the European standard to my Korean standards? So these are negotiations we have for many years to solve that. So we look at Asia Pacific, a region with a growth rate in GDP we can dream of, double often compared to the European Union, a young, prosperous and increasing population with lots of purchasing power and increasing. So it was quite natural to tap into that market with our trade agreements. Asia, we usually look at 4 areas. We have the Pacific, which is Australia, New Zealand, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. In East Asia, we have our first deep trade agreements, Japan and South Korea. Deep and comprehensive. We have not an agreement with, obviously, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, or Mongolia, and we don't have one with China. Our trade relations with these 4 countries are governed by the international rules of the World Trade Organization, like we treat also the Americans or the Russians. But Japan and Korea are best sellers in terms of trade agreements. In Southeast Asia, we have agreements in place now with Vietnam and Singapore. And we have in the Pacific an agreement in place with New Zealand. So 5 agreements at the moment in place in the Asia Pacific region. What is coming now is a heavy agenda. For many years we've tried, but now we are making serious progress with India in South Asia. We hope to sign a new trade agreement in December. By the end of the year, the political will is there from Prime Minister Modi and President von der Leyen. My colleagues are negotiating with the Chinese basically with the Indians basically on a daily basis to get this agreement through. It might not be as deep and comprehensive as we are used to, because there are certain areas the Indians don't like at all what we want, but we want to make sure that we have a mutually beneficial and commercially meaningful trade agreement with India, because it's a market of 1 billion people, lots of purchasing power, lots of opportunities, but very difficult to get into because they want to grow their own industry as well and protect them from outside imports. leaving South Asia, going to Southeast Asia, in addition to Vietnam and Singapore, we have restarted our negotiations with the Philippines, with Malaysia and Thailand. These are ongoing, and we hope to conclude these smaller FTAs in the next year. And we have completed already the negotiations with Indonesia, a huge market, 300 million people, Muslim country, but the big prize in Southeast Asia in terms of size of a market. So looking forward with in the near future, we hope to have Indonesia and India enter into force as soon as possible, perhaps next year already, so that the benefits can start to kick in. In particular, the reduction of tariffs and the abolition of import duties over certain transitional periods. And then in 2027, we hope to have then the birth, so to say, the entry into force of agreements with Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. So these are huge opportunities these trade agreements offer. Please do make use of them. They are very difficult to understand. I can tell you a trade agreement, the recent one with New Zealand, 4,000 pages in the official journal of the European Union. Nobody reads 4,000 pages. So we want to make it easy for our companies to understand these trade agreements. You don't have to read them because we have a platform that explains these trade agreements and explains how to make use of them and what's in for you in these trade agreements in terms of tariff reduction, in terms of opening of services sectors, procurement, and other areas. And that's then the next presentation of my colleague Nikolai, who will give a concrete demonstration of the tools we offer to companies, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, to learn about our trade agreement and to learn about the opportunities they provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bertz. Indeed, as a nice handoff to our next speaker, Mikołaj Olszewski. Mr. Olszewski is also in the same Director General for Trade and Economic Security of the European Commission, along with Mr. Bertz. And he is an expert on overseeing the enforcement and implementation of these trade agreements, and particularly an expert responsible for the development, management, and enhancement of the access to markets. That's access, numeral 2, markets, one word, portal, which is the resource for SMEs and others to understand the EU's outreach efforts. Mr. Olszewski.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, today I will briefly walk you through the Access to Markets, a comprehensive information portal for exporters and importers. And for that, I will use a presentation, so hopefully everything will work smoothly with that. Okay, so Access to Markets is a portal that we launched in October 2020 by merging previous market access database and trade help desk, two separate sites offering everything in one place, and also increasing significantly the functionality of the portal. It is an online tool that is designed specifically for EU companies that want to trade with third countries. Its main advantage is a clear layout and the fact that all the key information is available immediately without having to navigate through several complicated sources or menus, even on our website. The portal is fully interactive, is available in all EU languages, and most importantly, it's completely free of charge, and also offers many instructional videos that help users navigate to the portal. The main objective, our main objective here, was to support EU companies, especially medium and small and medium-sized enterprises in their international activities. We know that it's often very, very difficult for smaller companies to enter the foreign markets, and it can be a great challenge. And that's exactly why we created this tool. It's, like I said, it's a place where you can find all the relevant information that you need for both exports and imports. We currently cover over 145 147 to be more exact, export markets, providing detailed information on products, trade statistics, and trade agreements. What is also important to mention here that all the functionalities of the portal are available not only to companies operating from the EU, but also from several partner countries, such as Turkey, North Macedonia, Albania, Ukraine, Montenegro, Moldova, and Serbia. And apart from making all the data available, we also wanted to simplify it as much as possible. It's often very difficult to understand the complicated legal jargon or go through the 4,000 legal text pages, like Peter said, and for that reason, we wanted to present the information in a very practical and understandable way for the EU companies who often don't have the resources to study these legal texts. So who is Access to Markets for? Like I said, it's primarily aimed to help EU companies with particular emphasis on the small and medium-sized enterprises. Nevertheless, we are trying to keep the portal relevant and attractive for a very wide scope of stakeholders. And for that reason, it's also useful for business organizations and associations who use it to support their members, by business advisory services, who regularly also use the Access to Markets as a source of information for their clients, trade promotion organizations in EU member states who also use the portal to support their exporters, and of course, regular EU citizens who are just interested in this matter. At the very heart of Access to Markets is a so-called My Trade Assistant tool. The main section covers goods. It's a tool that provides detailed information on tariffs, internal taxes, customs procedures, and product requirements in the target markets, in the selected markets. One of its most innovative features is the Rules of Origin Self-Assessment Tool, or ROSA in short, which helps companies to determine whether their products qualify for a preferential tariff rate under EU trade agreements. ROSA offers an interactive test that guides the user step by step through the process of determining the product origin. It asks you a series of straightforward questions, such as where are the materials from, how much processing takes place in the EU, does the product meet the origin criteria, etc. So it's really just a step-by-step evaluation and not a legal exam, which at the end tells you whether you are likely to meet the rule, and also provides the information on the documents that are needed to confirm it. On top of that, My Trade Assistant, of which ROSA is a part, also contains information on trade barriers, trade statistics, and currently also on export restrictions which were imposed by Russia and Belarus. It's moved, okay. But of course, My Trade Assistant isn't only about goods. 2 years ago, we have expanded the functionality of Access to Markets, My Trade Assistant, to include also information about services and investment. The tool contains detailed requirements for exporting specific services to third countries, providing references to relevant regulations and information on the appropriate authorities there. It currently covers 12 key markets: Brazil, Canada, China, Hong Kong, India, Japan, Mexico, Norway, South Africa, Switzerland, UK, and the US, and with information on approximately 100 service sectors for each of them. And of course, we are constantly, continuously planning and working on further expansions to cover more countries and more service sectors to respond even better to the needs of the European companies. On another important expansion of My Trade Assistant is the tool for assessing the possibilities for EU companies to participate in public procurement in third countries. It's a so-called My Trade Assistant for procurement. It currently covers five markets, Canada, Japan, Switzerland, UK, and the US, and provides information on procurement notices, including the contracting authority, the subject of the contract, and the estimated value of the contract. It also contains direct links to legal texts and additional sources of information, which makes it, we believe, much easier to prepare bids for the interested companies. It's very useful, especially for SMEs who don't have the resources to independently research procurement opportunities in foreign markets. When it comes to the usage of access to markets, since its launch in October 2020, we have recorded over 12 million unique visitors. And My Trade Assistant for Good was used for over 27 million searches, while the newer features are also enjoying great interest with My Trade Assistant for Procurement and My Trade Assistant for Services, with thousands of searches each, and the Rosa nearly 1 million self-assessments. And that tells us that this portal is really appreciated by the EU companies and used as a daily operational tool rather than just a occasional reference. And with that, I would like to finish the PowerPoint part of my presentation, and if it's allowed, to go through the website and show you a little bit of a live demonstration on how to find these tools that I described. I also inserted the QR code here, which you can scan and then follow me, or just do it by typing access to markets in the Google search the way it's spelled, so with the two, as was mentioned at the beginning.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I took the liberty of, I think, putting the link in our chat group. I don't know if it's the correct one. Yes, please continue.
Okay, so this is the homepage of the Access to Markets. Here on the homepage, you can see a short video from our Deputy Director General, Denis Redonnet, who is also overseeing all the developments. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you have the My Trade Assistant that I was just describing, and we will come back to it in a moment. But also on the homepage, you can see the single entry point for which is a contact point within our European Commission, within our units, that serves as a channel to contact the European Commission when the things go wrong with while exporting your products to third markets. It's a way of letting us know that something is not correct, that you are facing some problems, and you can do it in a way of a simple market access complaint form when it comes to market access, or TSD, trade and sustainable development, or the generalized scheme of preferences complaint form, just to let us know if something comes up. It only has a few mandatory fields that consist of identifying yourself, describing the trade barrier that you're facing, as well as the sector and the product. But really, we want to keep it as simple as possible. So just by letting us know and informing us that, and starting the process, we can then collect, or also help you with collecting all the necessary information at a later stage. But coming back to the homepage, you can also find here information about our events and trainings that we organize regularly, 3 or 4 times per year. The next one will be taking place on the 9th of December. And I highly encourage you to participate if you're interested and you want to hear more about access to markets and all its functionalities and deep diver into what it can offer. As today we are a bit time limited. So this is the events section with the banner, of course, highlighting the next main event, at least according to us. If you scroll down, you have also the news for the relevant countries that might be of your interest, and the latest updates regarding any changes in tariffs, formalities, and taxes. But coming back to the heart of access to markets, to My Trade Assistant, we can see here that there are only 3 fields necessary to fill in before starting to get the information about all the formalities and the tariffs and all the information about exporting your product. What you need to do is to choose the country that you're exporting from. Let's say it's Greece to Japan. As you can see, also the last searches appear below. So you can see that I have already searched for it. So you can also do it by just clicking the link, and that's probably what I will do now. But in principle, you just put the HS code here or the name of the product, such as olives, Greece to Japan, and you will get a results. Okay, there is one more step because you have to decide what type of olives or what type of product are you interested in exporting. But after doing that, you will see a result page which specifies all the relevant information here. Starting with tariffs, you can see the different duty rates, different tariffs which are applicable to your product. Also on top, you have the date of the latest update of the page, and that's how you know that it's always up to date, and you're not working on some or not relying on some outdated information which could lead to some potential problems. But apart from tariffs, we also have Rules Rosa tool, which I also mentioned earlier, on which we also have specified trainings if you're interested in learning more about it. Apart from Rosa, there are also taxes applicable to your product, procedures and formalities. You can see 3 different sections, one of them being an overview of everything that is relevant for this market, and also specific ones which are only applicable to the olives in this case. Apart from that, there is the trade barriers section, which informs you about the trade barriers that are in this market, which were alerted to us by using the single entry point, which I showed earlier. That also gives you a perspective of what to expect while exporting. We also have trade flow statistics to give you a better understanding of what to expect, and of course, a quick guide on how to read these results. And maybe just to finish, I will repeat that here we have the events section, and there are trainings that we organize regularly. There are also some recordings from the previous trainings. If you would like to watch these, you can find it here. The latest one took place 2 weeks ago. It focused on EU-Canada trade, but it's also relevant for other products, not just and other markets, not just the Canada. And I think that gives a good overview. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. You can also contact us later by email or by the contact form on Access to Markets.
Thank you, Mr. Olszewski. I have one quick question. Just to be clear, the access to markets also covers intra-European trade, correct? Greek exporters to Germany, for example?
No, we focus only on trade with third countries. But what I didn't say maybe is that it also covers imports to the EU from third markets.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. George Banos. He is the partnership manager at the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council and has quite a long background in relationships between, I guess, Europe or Greece and ASEAN. He's also the co-founder and director of strategy of the ASEAN Frontier, a youth-led media platform on geopolitics and trade in ASEAN. Mr. Banos?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by thanking sincerely the Enterprise Greece for organizing this webinar. It was very interesting to hear the previous remarks, also to look into how the Access to Market platform operates. I think it is truly invaluable for Greek exporters and Greek businesses looking to expand eastwards. So let me introduce myself. My name is George Banos, and as previously mentioned, I serve as partnership manager at the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council. What the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council is a non-profit organization, and essentially what we aim to do is act as a bridge between Greek and Southeast Asian business communities. So I feel like, with that being said, my role today is not to speak from policy side, but rather to share what we see every day on the ground through our initiatives, through meeting with local businesses, and yeah, essentially where policy meets practice. And it also highlights how frameworks like the FTAs that we have examined before translate into actual opportunities for Greek businesses. And I feel like the best way to start, because we have examined Asia, we have examined Southeast Asia up to now, but obviously coming from the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council, I do feel the need to expand on why ASEAN is crucial, why specifically Greek exporters and Greek businesses should look at ASEAN in particular when looking to Asia more broadly. So yeah, it has been mentioned before, it's home to 660 million people. All combined, it will be the 5th largest economy in the world. And yeah, as Mr. Burrs as well said before, 4 to 5% annual growth, some countries higher, some countries lower. But yeah, driven essentially by a young, urban, and increasingly more digital population, which I've also had sort of the privilege to witness through our youth-led media platform. Asian youth is dynamic, they're very engaged, they're hungry to grow. And yeah, it's truly awe-inspiring to see this momentum existing in Southeast Asia. So from the beginning of my work with Hellenic ASEAN Business Council, what I see and what I truly believe is that for Greece and for Europe more broadly, ASEAN is not just a trade partner, but it's also a strategic complement. So there are many areas where the demand that we see in Southeast Asia also matches perfectly our comparative strengths here in Greece. So for example, in maritime and logistics, which is, as we all know, one of Greece's largest sort of more important sectors, yeah, ASEAN countries are expanding ports, they're expanding shipping networks. There's various shipyards which offer opportunities for shipbuilding for Greek companies. And yeah, it is a sector that we also focus a lot in our work. Currently, actually, part of our organization is in a trade and business mission to Indonesia, which will last for this week. And then we also have another trade and business mission on the 4th to 9th of November to Manila, to the Philippines. And part of both of these missions is heavily tailored towards maritime and shipbuilding, so visiting shipyards, visiting free ports, and so on and so forth. Another sort of sector I want to highlight is agri-food and F&B. And we see a rising demand for Mediterranean products, so olive oil, feta that was previously mentioned, and especially EU-level quality standards. And I think that from my experience, what we see very often is how much Southeast Asian countries value sort of the quality standards here in the EU and how much they associate, a European export product with higher standards, which can obviously be very beneficial for Greek exporters. And then another sort of briefly an area I want to highlight is also tourism and hospitality. So, there's a booming middle class in ASEAN, which increasingly travels more and more. And also our sustainable sort of tourism model here in Greece is very much looked at as a very interesting example in Southeast Asia. So that's important for companies to bear in mind. Essentially, I think for Greek exporters and for small and medium enterprises, these are open and dynamic markets, essentially. And what I think is that they're very much underexplored and very much, I have to say, outside the comfort zone of the average Greek business. And this is very much understood. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that a little bit later. But yeah, so at the moment, our FTA coverage in the region, as we mentioned, covers Singapore and Vietnam. We're on the point of finalizing the FTA with Indonesia, and I certainly hope that more countries are going to follow. Thailand is an example of that. So it is crucial to see FTAs and other instruments which facilitate trade and connection between Europe and Southeast Asia coming to fruition, because I feel like, and I deeply believe that ASEAN is at the epicenter of the future. It is a region that is caught between, I think, the major geopolitical rivalry of the next 50 years. And simply because of its population and dynamism, it will have to play a very, very major role for Europe and for Greece as well. So what I often say to businesses who meet us, who talk with us, is that what we've seen this far in ASEAN, whenever we try to connect a Greek business to matchmake with businesses in Indonesia, for example, or in the Philippines, is that there is such an openness to doing business with Greek companies and with European companies that procedures moved by themselves. So if there are Greek companies who are looking to secure meetings, let's say in Indonesia, and explore how they can invest, these meetings are very, very often secured almost instantly. And the reception that our businesses have, and we also have in our trade and business missions in Southeast Asia, I think have exceeded my expectations. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I want to focus a little bit on what we see on the ground. We recently, for example, hosted the first Philippine Business Roundtable here in Athens, which was, I'm happy to say, a very successful event. And from talking with various Greek business owners and part of the business community who attended, I think we have a very interesting dynamic taking place. So on the one hand, there's a lot of curiosity. There's almost an enthusiasm when presented with, the statistical and factual information about what makes ASEAN, the Philippines, every essentially country in Southeast Asia an attractive, destination for business. But on the other hand, there's still a very clear knowledge gap, I think, for Greeks and Greek businesses. So comments that we hear very often is, we'd love to explore Asia. It feels so far. We don't know where to start. We don't have any local partners. How easy is it to navigate this environment? I think, again, the FTAs serve as the backbone which enables doing business in the country that we do have FTAs for the time being. But yeah, as Mr. Burr said, this is going to be expanded very soon to include more Southeast Asian countries. So essentially, this points to me to two things. There's an awareness gap, and there's also a mindset gap, I think, particularly for Greek businesses. Many companies are unaware of how accessible ASEAN markets have become, and we've seen also from the previous presentations that they have very much become accessible to Greek exporters. And they also don't know about the mechanisms, the FTAs, the EU mechanisms, the improved trade conditions, also the support tools, as we saw with the Access to Market platform. But I do feel like the mindset gap is a little bit deeper. It is cultural. We are comfortable in what we know here in Greece. And we do have sort of Eurocentric orientation, especially when doing business. And again, this is very much understood. And we see that, yeah, when something feels unfamiliar, our instinct is pretty much hesitation. But I do feel like this needs to evolve. The truth is that Asia and ASEAN are not distant anymore. And they are not, and we do hear this quite often, they're not the market of the future. ASEAN is already here. ASEAN is booming right now. The opportunity to engage with the ASEAN market is now. It is not in 10 years, in 20 years, it has already started. And yeah, yet still we see outdated perceptions. So for example, people still associate countries like the Philippines with, example, labor migration, right? So, you know, of labor export rather to Greece. But I feel like anybody who has visited Manila or Jakarta recently, you know, they know that this is very much away from the truth. We're talking about workforces which are highly educated, they're English speaking, they're very much tech literate, and there is a very much booming service sector and innovation hubs across the region. So our message as the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council to Greek businesses, to Greek exporters, whether they're a large business or a small and medium enterprise, is that we are here to bridge this unfamiliarity, right? ASEAN is far, but most of all, it has been unfamiliar. And it is through our efforts that we aim to bridge that gap. And essentially, I want to kind of round up my remarks by saying how we aim to make ASEAN tangible and accessible for Greek companies. Essentially, we do this through connections, through facilitation, and through representation. So what we do is we organize, for example, business roundtables like the one with the Philippines in collaboration with the Philippine Trade and Investment Center in Paris. First of all, to increase awareness. And I think that this is step one in ensuring that there's more and more involvement by Greek businesses in ASEAN. But at the backbone of our efforts are the trade and business missions. This is where essentially companies who do have an idea of what they're aiming to do in ASEAN, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, wherever that might be, we do tailored business matchmaking. So essentially, a company shipping is meeting a company in shipping in Indonesia. We do have, for example, an MOU with Pertamina International Shipping, one of the largest maritime groups in the world, as well as with institutional partners. So with CADIN, the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, with EDB Singapore, and also with Enterprise Greece. So essentially, our institutional partnerships make business easier. And it's these meetings that companies are able to undertake when going over to Southeast Asia. And that I do feel like from experience seems to break the ice. And the clear realization after one of these trade and business missions is that, you know, it could not be easier to do business in Southeast Asia. The environment is very much welcoming for Greek businesses. I feel like they're welcomed in a way that they do not expect, and with an enthusiasm that they do not expect. And yeah, when it comes to representation, we also act as an information bridge. So we connect Greek exporters with ASEAN counterparts. We provide partner leads, sector briefings, and advice. Essentially, we are there to support Greek businesses in every way when they're looking to expand, to invest, to export in Southeast Asia. And I feel like there's a ton of sectors that we can continue to do this. Maritime and shipping, as I said, is the primary one for Greece. But at the same time, we've seen collaboration in education, in tourism and hospitality, in agri-food, as well as technology and renewables. So there's a ton of opportunity for Greek businesses in Southeast Asia. And as often happens with Asia in general, you know, people do businesses based on relationship, so it's not a transactional thing. So even the simple thing of going over to Indonesia, let's say, and having the opportunity to connect with businesses who are active in your sector, can lead to a long-term partnership that in turn, paves the way for all sorts of operations that a Greek company wants to undertake in Southeast Asia. So, yeah, essentially to close, I want to leave you with a simple message, which is that ASEAN offers the opportunity. As we've seen before, FTAs open the doors. And here at the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council, we help companies walk through them. So the infrastructure is there, the partnerships are there, the goodwill is definitely there. And now it's just a matter of using all these tools to affect change and to also help our businesses reach what I believe is the most important market globally right now. So yeah, thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panos. Before I introduce our final speaker, Ms. Helena Makripidi, I just wanted to call attention, Mr. Olszewski, that there is some positive comments about the Access to Two Markets portal on our chat room. And so I wanted to congratulate you on your efforts. And also, Mr. Panos, there was a request for some contact details, which Natasha has provided for you, but perhaps you might want to supplement them with contacts for the Hellenic ASEAN Business Council, just for the sake of our audience. There's also a question, and forgive me, Mr. Dimas, I'd like to just wait a second and turn to Ms. Makripidi, and then we will get to questions. If I may, I'd like to introduce our next and final speaker, Elena Makripidi, who is the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She is the second counselor for Economic and Commercial Affairs and has been with Greece's deputy to the EU Trade Policy Committee since September 2022. She will be summarizing the contents of the discussion so far and highlighting a few points about the value of FTAs, for example, and the growing importance of Asian economies. But I will let her speak for herself. Mrs. Makripidi, the floor is yours.
Καλησπέρα σας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ και εγώ εκ μέρους της μόνιμης αντιπροσωπείας της Ελλάδας στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και του Υπουργείου Εξωτερικών για αυτό το webinar. Όπως ξέρετε, το Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών συντονίζει τις θέσεις της χώρας προς την Επιτροπή για τις εξέλιξη διαπραγματεύσεις τις εμπορικές για νέες συμφωνίες και παρακολουθεί την εφαρμογή των υφιστάμενων συμφωνιών. Γι' αυτό λοιπόν θέλω να εκφράσω την ευγνωμοσύνη μου για τη συμμετοχή σε αυτό το webinar προς την Enterprise Greece, την Enterprise Europe Network Ελλάς. Χαιρόμαστε πολύ που έχουμε την ευκαιρία να συμβάλλουμε στην υλοποίησή του για δεύτερη συνεχή χρονιά και να ευχαριστήσω και τους συναδέλφους από την Επιτροπή που πάντα προσπαθούν να δημιουργούν τα εργαλεία για να εφαρμόζονται οι εμπορικές συμφωνίες. Το είδαμε όλοι πόσο χρήσιμο είναι το access to markets και παράλληλα εκλαϊκεύουν το περιεχόμενο των συμφωνιών προς τις επιχειρήσεις, αναδεικνύοντας τα σημεία που πραγματικά τις ενδιαφέρουν πιο πρακτικά. Είναι πολύ σημαντικό που βρισκόμαστε σε ένα κοινό φόρουμ. Οι εκπρόσωποι της Επιτροπής, της επιχειρηματικής κοινότητας, ελληνικών και δημοσίων και ιδιωτικών φορέων που προσπαθούμε όλοι να δράσουμε ως διευκολυντές της γεφύρωσής μας με τις αγορές της Ασίας. Ακούσαμε πολλά ενδιαφέροντα μηνύματα και θα προσπαθήσω να συνοψίσω τα σημαντικότερα από αυτά. Καταρχάς, είναι αναντήρητο ότι στο σημερινό αβέβαιο παγκόσμιο γεωοικονομικό περιβάλλον η διαφοροποίηση των πηγών εφοδιασμού και οι προορισμοί των προϊόντων μας είναι απαραίτητη. Ο εντυνόμενος ανταγωνισμός και προστατευτισμός ανάμεσα στη ΣΥΠΑ, την Κίνα αλλά και ευρύτερα μόνο αναδεικνύουν την καθοριστική ανάγκη της ευκολότερης πρόσβασής μας σε ξένες τρίτες αγορές. Γι' αυτό και είναι απόλυτα σχετικό το δίκτυο των εμπορικών συμφωνιών της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Μιλήσαμε για πάνω από 40 εμπορικές συμφωνίες με πάνω από 70 χώρες. Γι' αυτό και το σημερινό λοιπόν webinar είναι εξαιρετικά επίκαιρο. Αφορά την Ασία με τον αυξανόμενο ρόλο της κεντρικά στις παγκόσμιες αλυσίδες. εφοδιασμού. Με την Ασία έχουμε σε ισχύ, αναφέρθηκαν ενδεικτικά οι συμφωνίες με τη Σιγκαπούρη, το Βιετνάμ, την Νότια Κορέα, σε λίγο και με την Ινδονησία. Αλλά υπάρχουν και σε εξέλιξη διαπραγματεύσεις, πολύ σημαντικές, με χώρες της ΑΖΕΑΝ, όπως η Μαλαισία, η Ταϊλάνδη και οι Φιλιππίνες, και φυσικά με την Ινδία, που αποκαλούμε εμείς στις ομάδες εμπορίου το Everest των διαπραγματεύσεων. Λόγω της ισχύως, η οποία εκδηλώνεται και μέσω της διαπραγματευτικής της τάσης. Για το λόγο αυτό, λοιπόν, οι ενημερωτικές δράσεις για τις Συμφωνίες Ελευθέρων Συναλλαγών, τις FTAs, αποτελούν ουσιώδες εργαλείο για την αξιοποίηση των ευκαιριών που δημιουργούνται και μέσα από αυτές και μέσα από στοχευμένες παρουσιάσεις και το διάλογο που ακολουθεί, οι επιχειρήσεις μπορούν να μάθουν τους όρους πρόσβασής τους στις τρίτες αγορές, τις αυξήσεις δυστυχώς ή τις μειώσεις δασμών, ως τώρα, που εξασφαλίζουν, τους κανόνες καταγωγής και τις διαδικασίες πιστοποίησης, αποκτώντας έτσι τα απαραίτητα εφόδια για να ενισχύσουν την εξαγωγική τους δραστηριότητα. Μάλιστα, πρόσφατα αποδείχθηκε πόσο σημαντική και χρήσιμη μπορεί να είναι η βάση access to markets, λόγω της αμερικάνικης δασμολογικής πολιτικής που αύξησε ραγδαία την μεταβλητότητα τους δασμούς. Εδώ υπάρχει και ένα δεύτερο μήνυμα από εμάς προς την επιχειρηματική κοινότητα. Η ενεργό συμμετοχή σας και η ανατροφοδότηση από εσάς έχουν για μας ανεκτήμητη αξία. Γιατί μέσα από τη διάδραση μαζί σας μπορούμε να εντοπίζουμε ποια είναι τα πρακτικά προβλήματά σας στην εφαρμογή των συμφωνιών και τις ιδιαίτερες ανάγκες κάθε κλάδου σε σχέση με κάποια αγορά στόχο και να τις μεταφέρουμε στην Επιτροπή. Θέλω να σημειώσω κάτι που ανέφερε ο κύριος Μπάνος, γιατί κάτι χαρακτηριστικό με αυτές τις χώρες, τις χώρες της Ασίας. Υπάρχει μία απόσταση, ένα χάσμα νοοτροπίας, εξηγείται πολιτισμικά, ψυχολογικά, κοινωνικά. Μπορεί να δημιουργήσει στολή αρχικά. Αυτά τα εργαλεία όμως μας δείχνουν πόσο εύκολο ή όχι τόσο δύσκολο είναι να έχουμε πρόσβαση σε αυτές τις αγορές. Και όλη η συζήτηση που διεξάγεται εδώ μεταξύ μας μπορούν να περάσουν το μήνυμα προς την επιχειρηματική κοινότητα ότι υπάρχει ένα πλέγμα φορέων που μπορεί να υποστηρίξει τις προσπάθειές τους προς αυτές τις αγορές. Η πληροφόρηση, δηλαδή ο διάλογος που θα αναπτυχθεί σε συνέχεια αυτών των ενημερωτικών δράσεων, επιτρέπει και να βελτιωθούν τα υφιστάμενα εργαλεία και ως εκ τούτου να ενισχυθεί η ανταγωνιστικότητά μας στις διεθνείς αγορές. Έτσι λοιπόν οι δράσεις αυτές δεν περιορίζονται μόνο σε ενημέρωση, αλλά καλλιεργούν ουσιαστική συνεργασία μεταξύ ημών και των επιχειρήσεων και μετατρέπουν την εμπορική πολιτική της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης σε πρακτικό εργαλείο ανάπτυξης. Αυτά από πλευράς μου και πάλι πολλές ευχαριστίες και περιμένω την συζήτηση που θα ακολουθήσει.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makapidi. That concludes the prepared remarks of the program. We have a question and answer session. We are running a little over time, I hasten to add. So right now, we're budgeted for 10 minutes of questions and answers, just to let you know. We did have one question that came in, and it wasn't directed at anyone in particular, Ms. Vimas, but I suppose, because it's a somewhat geopolitical question, I think I'd like to address it to Mr. Banos because he might have an overview, and he mentioned shipping in particular, if I may. If you feel uncomfortable, sir, then please, we can move on to the next question. But do you have any prospects, any predictions about sort of Red Sea trade, about the ability of goods to pass through the Red Sea from Europe to Asia?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the question. Again, to all the other panelists, feel free to pitch in here. What we've talked about a lot, also with our counterparts from the embassies of ASEAN countries here, is just exactly this: the potential for Greece to become a hub for the entry of products from Asia to Europe, and this is simply geographical. So when going through the Red Sea, Greece is the first country and the most reasonable destination for Asian exports to enter the EU market, yet we see that this is not the case. And this is something that, again, we've talked about countless of times, also with business people as well as with diplomats from Asia, where they also seem to ask, why is this not the case? Why would the ship go to Rotterdam, for example, and not just stop in Piraeus? Look, the answer is multifaceted. There's also, I think, an underdevelopment of the infrastructure connecting Greece to mainland Europe, which also makes it a little bit difficult. I know maybe the question also invites us to predict how the situation in terms of security is going to develop in the Red Sea. I don't think I'm the perfect person to answer that. I think, yeah, it does remain in many ways unpredictable, but the Red Sea is still and continues to be the main link between Asia and Europe, and it's going to continue, I think, in my opinion, to be that. So yeah, although I don't feel like this answers the question completely, what I feel like Greece should do to better position itself is to double down on becoming the center hub in terms of shipping and trade from Asia to Europe. It is a geographical, it's something that geography itself makes common sense. But yeah, it does remain a little bit out of reach due to the need to develop further our infrastructure, our connectivity with Europe, yeah, and so on and so forth. But yeah, if anybody else wants to contribute, feel free.
Are there answers from anyone else? I'll make an intervention. My background is as a business and a political reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and I couldn't tell you when the Red Sea will be a safe place to pass through. It's a little bit up in the air and depends on circumstances beyond our control. But yes, in shipping, there is the median line between the Suez Canal and the Straits of Gibraltar, which is a line that you have to take to reach the ports of Northern Europe. And the closest divergence from that median line, of course, ships move in straight lines and every divergence costs fuel, is Piraeus. And of course, Piraeus is the first sort of location where you connect physically to the rest of Europe. So I presume Piraeus is and will remain a major transit hub for this is a great advantage. If I may, if there are no immediate questions, if I may, I'd like to jump back to also a broader question to Mr. Barrett, if he's still with us. Just curious, sir, about sort of if there are still prospects for an EU-ASEAN free trade agreement. I know it was discussed, and I realize under the changing economic circumstance, perhaps expediency might be more valuable than, there's an expression, let not the perfect be the enemy of the good. Perhaps it's too complicated. Perhaps the world has gotten too complicated, but I observe that the EU did manage to pull over the threshold a Mercosur agreement that has been negotiated for a number of years. I was wondering if there might be an EU-ASEAN agreement in the foreseeable future.
Okay. Well, thanks. Pertinent question, obviously, because we love to engage with regions, as we are ourselves a region consisting of 27 countries, basically. And in Asia, we have various of these groups. We have the ASEAN group of 10, perhaps soon 11 with Timor-Leste. We have the CPTPP, which brings together Latin American countries, Asian countries. We have the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which then suddenly includes China and lots of ASEAN. So a number of initiatives are there, and we indeed saw 10 years ago a possibility to engage with the ASEAN region as a whole. After all, this seems to be a very integrated market, the ASEAN market, and other countries have negotiated with ASEAN, like China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, India. They all have a trade agreement with ASEAN. Now, the thing is, we have a mandate from the European Council, from the member states, to negotiate these trade agreements. And our negotiations with Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore are all based on the same original mandate to negotiate with ASEAN. And that mandate says what we have to bring home in terms of ambitions and what chapters we need to discuss. And when we negotiate with the ASEAN as a group, we started with ASEAN as a group, we quickly realized that ASEAN is not as integrated as the European Union is. It focuses a lot on trading goods, and there's a trading goods agreement, a bit on services, but that's about it then, in terms of what we are interested in. There's nothing on procurement, on technical regulations, rudimentary only, nothing on trade and sustainable development like labor and environment, all things we want to see, or mention intellectual property rights. So then we said, okay, this is perhaps not the right time. ASEAN has to integrate a bit further, but we don't want to wait until this happens. And therefore, we now switched to the bilateral agenda, starting with Vietnam, Singapore. And should we conclude also with Indonesia, we have concluded, but Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, we cover 6 out of the 10 ASEAN member states. That leaves aside then Brunei, small, and Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, which are least developed countries anyhow, who already have super preferential access to our market because they are so vulnerable and least developed. And it's very difficult to convince them then to open their markets for our products because we have nothing to pay, because we already grant them preferential access unilaterally as least developed countries. So with these 6 FTAs, we cover basically the majority of economic activity in ASEAN. And then we have to see whether that creates the momentum when we pull these 6 along with our ambitions and all our chapters to revisit then the idea of a ASEAN-EU free trade agreement. In the meantime, we look at more sectoral initiatives. Shall we look into more the environmental area and the digital area to have perhaps a sectoral agreement rather than a full-fledged, deep and comprehensive trade agreement?
Thank you, sir. We have 2 minutes remaining. I would like to do a quick question, and please keep your, we have none from the audience, but just a very quick question to Mr. Banos and also to Ms. Makripidi very quickly. Are there particular areas in Asia for Greek exporters, more B2B, more B2C, things like construction materials or services or technology that you see as being particularly bright prospects in the next few years ahead? Mr. Banos, please.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. I think from my perspective, I would say that short to medium term, I would say that mainly opportunities are B2B. I think that they can start, that, for example, Greek firms can start faster through distributors, through importers, through institutional partnerships, especially in the sectors that we mentioned before. So F&B is one of them, tourism is another one, education, maritime, whatever that might be. And then what I think is that once foundation, sort of visibility is established, then maybe there's also potential for B2C. Of course, there's a lot of competition in that regard. So I would still say that a strong B2B presence would open doors later on for sales to consumers in these markets. Which is obviously the goal here. So that's essentially what I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Makripidi, would you like to add anything from your experience? Have you seen Greek exports in particular areas that have sort of taken the lead in new markets?
Ναι, σας ευχαριστώ πολύ για την ερώτηση. Θα προσθέσω κάτι και στην προηγούμενη ερώτηση που κάνατε στον κύριο Μπάνο, ότι η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση διαπραγματεύεται ακριβώς επειδή εντατικοποιεί την έξοδό της προς νέες αγορές, στις περιπτώσεις που δεν είναι έτοιμες οι τρίτες χώρες να κάνουν μια ολοκληρωμένη συμφωνία ελευθέρων συναλλαγών, διαπραγματεύεται τομεακές συμφωνίες. Έχουμε πολλά παραδείγματα πρόσφατα. Έχουμε την συμφωνία βιώσιμων επενδύσεων με την Αγγόλα. Έχουμε μια νέα συμφωνία στην πράσινη ενέργεια, στο clean tech που λέμε, στις πράσινες τεχνολογίες με την Νότια Αφρική, η οποία είναι πάρα πολύ επίκαιρη και η οποία θα ολοκληρωθεί τώρα. Οπότε οι τομεακές συμφωνίες, κυρίως στους τομείς των ψηφιακών, αλλά και της πράσινης ενέργειας, είναι πάρα πολύ σχετικές. Και μάλιστα, ιδίως η πράσινη ενέργεια είναι ένας τομέας που πάρα πολύ μας ενδιαφέρει σαν Ελλάδα και έχουμε και ανταγωνιστικά πλεονεκτήματα και συμμετέχουμε ενεργά και στις διαπραγματεύσεις και ελπίζω μετά την ολοκλήρωση δηλαδή των συμφωνιών να αρχίσουν νέες επιχειρηματικές συνεργασίες σε αυτούς τους τομείς. Από εκεί και πέρα, σε όλες τις άλλες διαπραγματεύσεις, είμαστε παρόντες με τους πιο σημαντικούς εξαγωγικούς μας τομείς, όπως είναι ο αγροτοδιατροφικός τομέας, ο κύριος πυλώνας των εξαγωγών μας, με όλες αυτές τις περιοχές τώρα της Ασίας, για τις οποίες μιλάμε, αλλά και άλλες, θα είναι πολύ σημαντικός και στη Μέση Ανατολή και στην Αφρική. Έχουμε τα δομικά υλικά, έχουμε τις φαρμακευτικές, χημικές βιομηχανίες, στις οποίες έχουμε συγκριτικό πλεονέκτημα, με πολλά ενδιάμεσα προϊόντα, με γενώσιμα φάρμακα και φυσικά τις υπηρεσίες μας. Όχι μόνο στον ναυτιλιακό τομέα, αλλά στις μεταφορές και στις υπηρεσίες logistics. Νομίζω ότι αυτά είναι τα κύρια πλεονεκτήματά μας και θα θέλαμε, επαναλαμβάνω, το μήνυμα από εμάς είναι πάντα να ακούμε από αυτούς τους επιχειρηματικούς τομείς, τους εκπροσώπους τους, τι ακριβώς βλέπουν και σαν προβλήματα που δημιουργούνται στην πρόσβασή τους στις τρίτες αγορές, αλλά και ενδυνάμει ευκαιρίες που υπάρχουν. Ευκαιρίες και ενδυνάμει ευκαιρίες. Θέλουμε πολύ αυτή την πληροφόρηση από το πεδίο. Δεν μπορούμε να την έχουμε μόνο αναλύοντας τα στατιστικά στοιχεία. Καταλαβαίνετε, είναι μια πιο ευαίσθητη πληροφόρηση που μόνο ο επιχειρηματίας σε ένα συγκεκριμένο κλάδο τον έχει. Ελπίζω να μην πήρα πολύ από το χρόνο σας.
Thank you very much. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Οπότε όλοι το ακροατήριο μας είναι καλεσμένο να συμμετάσχουν σε αυτή τη διαδικασία. Everyone listening on this call is also part of the process too. Feedback goes both ways. On that note, and with that final point, I would like to thank very much our panelists and our presenters at the beginning for their participation, and I look forward to the next the next seminar along these lines. Thank you very much, madam, gentlemen. Have a good afternoon.